AI-generated video at one point depicting him wearing a crown and flying a fighter jet that dumped human waste over protesters. It's something that was a big topic here on Capitol Hill today, at least, and Speaker Johnson was asked about it, and this is what he had to say.
The president uses social media to make a point. You can argue he's probably the most effective person who's ever used social media for that. He is using satire to make a point.
Scott Jennings doesn't just show up to debates, he dominates them. And this time, he turned a CNN panel into a live lesson in media denial. The segment began with Caitlin Collins framing Trump's latest post, an AI-generated video of him flying a fighter jet and dropping waste over protesters, as something dark and dangerous. The implication? That political humor from Trump equals dictatorship. But then Speaker Mike Johnson stepped in, and everything changed. Calmly, firmly, he explained what no one in the media wanted to admit. The president uses social media to make a point, Johnson said. He's probably the most effective person who's ever done it. That's when the tension broke, because in a single sentence, Johnson reframed the entire story. It wasn't about outrage, it was about expression. It wasn't propaganda, it was satire. A sharp, clever way to make a point in a political landscape that's forgotten how to take a joke. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Speaker Johnson set the tone, and what happened next would prove just how allergic the mainstream media has become to humor, context, and truth.
Do you think it's making a point, Scott?
Well, yeah, he was making a point. I mean,
point?
why shouldn't the president use a made-up video to respond to a rally that has a made-up reason? I mean, it's a non-existent reason. We don't have a monarchy in this country. We have a presidency won by Donald Trump, who won the popular vote, who won the Electoral College, who won all the swing states. We have a democracy. People voted, and they elected the president, and the only thing they're mad about is that he is lawfully executing the office of the presidency and enforcing laws that have been on the books for a long time. So he made up a video. They made up a reason to have a rally. And I think it was kind of funny, to be honest with you.
This is about democracy. This is about coming out, making our voices heard. We've seen this in polls for months. People across the political spectrum are not happy with the way Donald Trump is leading this country. We are far enough past the election that he is accountable. And that's the other message that I think this so-called satire sends, which is it's not okay to hold your president to account. If you disagree, you're allowed to go to the streets. You're allowed to say how you feel. And the last thing I'll say is this. There is absolutely no comparison to what we saw over the weekend, which was peaceful and was about democracy and loving our country, and what we saw on January 6th at the president's behest, which was about tearing down our country, our democracy, and an election that was lawfully committed.
The moment Speaker Johnson's defense of Trump ended, Scott Jennings jumped in. And that's when the whole tone of the CNN panel shifted. Jennings looked straight at Caitlin Collins and said what everyone else was too afraid to say. Why shouldn't the president use a made-up video to respond to a made-up rally? It was pure logic, and the room fell silent. He reminded them that this wasn't some monarchy or dictatorship. It was a democracy that elected Trump through both the Electoral College and the popular vote in every key state that mattered. The protesters' outrage wasn't about corruption or justice. It was about denial. They just couldn't accept that the system worked, and Trump won. Jennings's calm delivery made the attack even more devastating. He wasn't ranting, he wasn't defensive, he was teaching, reminding the audience that freedom of expression doesn't disappear just because it offends one side. And what Speaker Johnson had framed as satire, Jennings expanded into something deeper, a civics lesson on accountability. He exposed how easily the left confuses disagreement with danger, how they preach democracy while trying to control who's allowed to speak in it. By the end of that exchange, the moral outrage from the panel had turned into uncomfortable silence. They weren't debating anymore. They were just reacting. And for once, the CNN set looked like what it truly was, a stage struggling to control the story after being hit with the truth.
Well, Scott, to the point that you're making, Scott, you're saying that this isn't, the reason isn't legitimate here because obviously Trump was elected last November. There was something interesting, I thought, that Senator Ted Cruz took away, though, from what we saw this weekend. Listen to what he said today.
There is a lot of energy, there is a lot of anger on the left, and elections can be dangerous when one side is mobilized, is angry. I'll tell you, in terms of fundraising, the Democrats are raising a lot more money because their radicals hate Trump so much. And look, angry, energized voters show up to vote.
I mean, these protests were massive. Does he have a point there in terms of energy that is being felt by voters and the ones who show up to vote?
Yeah, look, he's right to worry about every election. He's right to worry about the political opposition. And there is obviously energy in opposing Donald Trump. Of course, there was energy in opposing him last year, and he won the election. One of the things the Republican Party has yet to prove that it can figure out is how to get people who vote for Trump to turn out in midterm elections. That is a concern rolling for the Republican Party. So, of course, you take nothing for granted in politics. I would point out, though, they would have had a better use of their time this weekend knocking on doors in Virginia or New Jersey than, marching around the mall or whatever in crazy cat costumes this weekend. But that's how they chose to use their time. But Ted Cruz and every Republican knows you take nothing for granted, and the next election could bring peril. And the Republicans have to look at what the Democrats are doing and say, we're not going to let them have more energy than us. I mean, that's a truism for every election.
So, Scott, you're saying that Americans who decide they want to take to the streets and make their voices heard because they feel like their president is not listening to them and, frankly, in some instances has said we're the enemy simply because we disagree with them. You're saying that's not a good use of time. You're criticizing these people who went out to, be Americans and say they love their country and want their president to listen to them. That's not a good use of time. That's outrageous.
Well, no, I mean, normal people were spending time with their family and watching college football. I don't care how they spend their time. If they want to go out, if they want to go out and protest, be my guest. They're welcome to do it, and I don't really care whether they do it or not. But I just happen to think if I were Democrats, I would rather have directed that energy into the campaigns that are going on this year instead of marching around the way they did. But listen, you guys spend your time however you want. It's a free country, not a monarchy.
Just when the panel thought the storm had passed, Senator Ted Cruz stepped into the conversation, and what he said made the room even quieter. Cruz warned that Democrats were channeling anger, not purpose, that their energy was built on resentment, not reform. He reminded everyone that political rage might fill rallies, but it doesn't build majorities. Jennings nodded, taking that point and pushing it further. He told Caitlin Collins that Cruz was right. Democrats were wasting their momentum on noise instead of strategy. While Trump's base was organizing, Democrats were marching in circles, literally, wearing costumes and chasing cameras. Jennings pointed out that if they truly believed in saving democracy, they'd be out knocking on doors in swing states, not parading through D.C. with hashtags and slogans. That's when Collins tried to trap him, accusing Jennings of mocking Americans for protesting. But he didn't flinch. He leaned in and said calmly, "It's a free country." That line stopped everything. No yelling, no comeback. Just silence. Because in that one sentence, Jennings reminded everyone what this debate was really about. Freedom. The freedom to speak, to disagree, and yes, even to make fun of those who claim to own the moral high ground. Cruz and Jennings, two very different styles, one message: outrage isn't leadership. And no amount of moral posturing can hide the fact that the left's resistance has become a performance, a protest against reality itself. So what do you think? Did Jennings and Senator Cruz just expose how the left confuses outrage with activism? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This is World Insight Hub, where facts speak louder than spin. Thanks for tuning in.